Hi everyone. In today's video, I just wanted to give you a little bit of an introduction to the nervous system and the overarching parts that exist within it. So, the nervous system is quite an important system of the body as it is involved in basically all of our interactions in our daily lives, and it basically is also involved in all of the integration, interpretation, and thinking that we do. So, the nervous system. It's quite a big topic, and subsequently, it does have a lot of subclasses. So, firstly, if I can spell it correctly, the nervous system contains two main branches. These are the central nervous system, central nervous system, and the peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system. Okay, so the central nervous and peripheral nervous system. What do they do? So firstly, let's start off with the most important, which is the central nervous system. The central nervous system actually contains only the brain and spinal cord. Its main role is to actually allow for the integration of information. And now, what do I mean by integration? Well, integration basically means that it takes all of the sensory information that it receives from the peripheral nervous system and tries to come up with a response in order to react to that particular stimulus. So, say for example, you accidentally step on a sharp object on the ground, the neurons in your foot will take the message from your foot to your spinal cord, and eventually, depending on how sharp the object is, if it's sharp enough to induce a spinal cord reflex, then your foot might just come off the sharp object straight away without you thinking about it. However, if there's something else going on here, then the brain can step in as well, integrate a particular response, and that integration involves, hey, we should probably not step on this, and thus allow for your foot to be taken off. So that's what integration of information basically means. And the central nervous system mainly contains what we call multipolar neurons. And this, once again, relates to the topic of structure relating to function, because multipolar neurons have many dendrites that project off their nerve cell body, and one axon that extends to the axon terminal. So obviously you want the combination of a lot of information here and it being streamlined so it can be relayed to other parts of the central nervous system. So that's what the central nervous system does. The peripheral nervous system, on the other hand, is a little bit different. It's involved basically with sensory and motor information. Now, what do I mean by those words? Well, the peripheral nervous system actually has two different subcategories, which I'll go through here. And these are, these are the sensory or afferent division, and the motor or efferent division. Now, the sensory division, as the name suggests, is involved with all sensory inputs into the body. So, believe it or not, the sensory division actually contains two of its own divisions, as does the motor or efferent division. It contains the somatic division, so the somatic sensory division, and the visceral division, or visceral sensory division. And the same case lies with the motor division. So there is a somatic and visceral division. Now, I think it's easier to define the functions of the two types of nervous system, which are the sensory and motor, with the subsystems that they actually contain. So let's start off with, firstly, the somatic division of the sensory nervous system. The somatic division is actually involved basically with all of the senses that you associate with different sensory organs. So it involves the eyes, and these include bipolar neurons, so eyes. It's also responsible for changes in external temperature. And just as another example, it is also involved with the sense of touch with the outside world. So this is what I would say, stereotypically associate with the sensory division of the nervous system. On the other hand, the visceral division of the sensory nervous system is actually involved with something that may not come into mind straight away, and that is the internal organs that are present within the body. So the visceral division, unlike the somatic division, is involved with processes such as changes in internal temperature, and, for example, changes in shapes of different organs. So, for example, if your digestive tract is empty, then obviously it's going to be smaller than when your digestive tract is full, or if your stomach is distended or not. So the shapes of different organs can allow for you to feel different things. So if your stomach is empty, it's likely that your visceral division of your sensory division of the peripheral nervous system is going to indicate to your brain that you should probably feel hungry now. So these are basically the sensory divisions that exist. Now, what about the motor divisions? Well, the motor division actually also contains a somatic and visceral division. In terms of the somatic division, the parts are actually a little bit easier to remember. Somatic, if you may think it this way, kind of relates to voluntary movements. So somatic division of the motor efferent division actually controls all skeletal muscles. So think about your biceps, quadriceps, or any other muscle that is present around the body. The motor somatic division actually controls that. In terms of the visceral division, on the other hand, it's a little bit more complicated, because think about it as a motor division that controls all of your organs that you can't voluntarily control. So, for example, all smooth muscle, so actions such as peristalsis, cardiac muscle, and even some glands. So these three divisions are, these four divisions are all involved. However, the motor division actually contains two more divisions within it, and that's not within the somatic and visceral division, but only the visceral division. Now, it's important to note that this division that occurs here actually involves the formation, basically, of another nervous system, and it's called the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system contains two subgroups of its own. One is called the sympathetic nervous system, or sympathetic division, and there is also the parasympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions are also very important in the body. And if we just look at it anatomically for a second, Say that this is the spinal cord, and these are the various vertebral bones that exist within the spinal cord. The sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems are actually controlled by two different parts of the spinal cord. Firstly, the sympathetic nervous system is what we call has a thoracolumbar outflow. This thoracolumbar outflow basically means that from the thoracic end to the lumbar end of the spinal cord, all of the nerves of the sympathetic nervous system, so they'll lead off from here, are present in this area. On the other hand, in terms of the parasympathetic nervous system, we say that this has a craniosacral outflow. So all of the nerves of the parasympathetic nervous system lead out from the cranial or top part and sacral or bottom part. So I'll just write these words out for your use. So parasympathetic nervous system has a craniosacral outflow, and the sympathetic nervous system has a thoracolumbar outflow. Now you may be wondering, what do these nervous systems actually control? So given their names and given that they are part of the visceral division of the motor nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system is actually involved in all of your what we call flight or fight responses. So think about an increased heart rate. Maybe even think about what you feel when you're stressed. You have an increased breathing rate. And actually, although you may not notice it, when you're stressed, you have less of a blood flow to your digestive organs. So decreased blood flow to your digestive organs is another thing that occurs during your flight or fight response. Now, on the other hand, if you've already not guessed so far, the parasympathetic nervous system is actually involved in all of your rest and digest processes. So if we were just to take the exact opposite of these processes here, we would say that the parasympathetic nervous system is involved in a decrease in heart rate, decrease in breath rate, and as the name suggests, as this is the rest and digest system, there would actually be an increase in blood flow to the digestive organs. So, if we were to review the nervous system as a whole, firstly, there are two main divisions, the central and peripheral nervous systems, in which the central nervous system contains the brain and spinal cord and is involved in the integration of information. And this integration of information is met by the form, which is that it contains multipolar neurons. On the other hand, the peripheral nervous system is involved in the processing or the sending of sensory information and also the sending of motor information towards organs of the body. So thus it contains two divisions, the sensory and motor division. The sensory contains two divisions called the somatic and visceral division, in which the somatic division contains control or sensory information from the eyes, which are bipolar neurons, changes in external temperature and touch. The visceral division contains or senses changes in internal temperature and distension and changes in shape of organs. The motor efferent division, on the other hand, contains the somatic and visceral division, in which the somatic division controls all skeletal muscles, and the visceral division contains and controls all involuntary muscles, such as smooth cardiac muscle and glands. And finally, the visceral division within itself contains the autonomic nervous system, which itself contains two more divisions, which are the sympathetic and parasympathetic system. The sympathetic system is involved with the fight or flight response, and therefore an example or a few examples would be an increase in heart rate, increase in lung rate or breathing rate, and a decrease in blood flow to the digestive organs. The parasympathetic nervous system, on the other hand, is involved with the rest and digest response, and therefore involves a decrease in heart rate and breath rate, and an increase in blood flow to the digestive organs. So this has been the nervous system. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.